Okay, thank you for coming. My name is Damian. I'm a security researcher and auditor and run Composable Security. And we actually built the first security checklist for smart contracts called as CSVS. So you've heard about that. And today I'd like to tell you that you can be actually secure by design, and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to cost millions. Like, if you think that security is hard and takes a lot of time and a lot of money, that's only partially true. So we can do it with limited budget. And like the simple question, I could finish my presentation here because the simple answer to the question how to achieve that is to start early. But of course that doesn't say much. So I'm gonna tell you how you could start early. But to provide some context, this talk ideally is for new or growing projects that don't have too much experience in security, but they really want to do that. Like they want to take security seriously. But I still think that there are some nice outcomes from this presentation, even for big projects that are like EVM based or on Filecoin on FVM. So yeah, let's start with the first thing. Who of you have heard about threat modeling? Raise your hand. Cool. And who has done that, actually? All right, cool. So the idea behind threat modeling is actually to identify the threats before you actually implement them, right? So you can do it internally, and it's not that hard because like you can think of that like of evil brainstorming, right? So you have a group of your people that knows your project best, so you have the advantage, and you try to identify. In the end, you try to know what can go wrong in your project, and then you can mitigate those threats before you even start implementing the project. So this can be your internal exercise, and you simply have to answer like 3 questions. The first one is, who is your potential threat actor? And like you can enumerate all roles in your application and also the external components that you integrate with. But also you can always include some anonymous user and a whale. So somebody who has like, let's say, unlimited funds that and tries to attack your project. Then you have to answer yourself, what is the thing that they will try to achieve? Like, what are the key assets that you want to protect? Like, for example, the funds of your clients. So the attacker would probably try to steal them or to log them or to make your application unresponsive. So these are the goals. And then when you have these both, you have to connect them by answering the question, how? So how can they achieve that? And then when you have those findings, you can decide, because that's not the end. You have to decide what you're going to do with them. And the simplest answer is to mitigate them, to remove the threat, right? But that's not always the case. Sometimes you actually have to accept the risk coming from a threat, or you can delegate them. Like, for example, if you are building a DApp, then you are delegating the DOS threat to the Ethereum or FVM, right? Because you are the infrastructure now. You don't have to run your own infrastructure. You delegate the risk of denial of service to external providers, like, for example, Ethereum Infra or Filecoin. And here's an example of the partial result of such exercise. So we built a diagram, and this is actually a diagram from my presentation about threats for Uniswap v4, a new version coming in October that includes hooks. So when you have a list of those threats, then you can focus on them and you can prioritize them. So in this example, we've chosen the 6 that are the most either common or the most important in terms of the impact on your security. I'm not going to cover them. I just want to show you how the output of that could look like, of the threat modeling session, of the internal exercise in your company. And well, why does it work? Well, because you know your project not only from the optimistic flow, like you don't only cover on how it should work, but you also cover the part how it might not work. Like, so what are the scenarios where your application could not work as intended, right? And also, you make your developers security minded. So you change their mindset from building stuff to thinking also about the things that can go wrong. And also, in the end, when you find those threats and you mitigate them, the audit or the bug bounties are not going to be a pain, because you'll have less vulnerabilities, less bugs, so you'll pay less and you'll get more time. And the great thing about threat modeling is also that you don't need actually to hire companies to do that from end to end. You can do it internally. And how you would ask, how can we start that? So the next tip here is the security champion. Who of you is familiar with that term, security champion? Okay, so the idea is that you are building your own in-house security. And you have a limited budget, right? So you don't want to hire somebody who's very like top-notch person in security that focuses only on security, because first of all, you don't have enough money for that, and you don't have enough tasks for that person. You'll probably find them, but you really want to focus on the things that are really important for you now. So the other way, you can do it the other way around. You can find a person in your team that's interested in security. This can be a developer, for example. But the person who likes to know what can go wrong, like who likes to break the things, not only build them, but also break them. And then, when you have such candidate, which is not a new person, you don't make new hires, you simply select someone from your team, you have to, like, your cost would be to give them some time for research, right? That's the whole cost. And of course, you have to specify some goals, and they can be very high level. So we can ask the person, how can we be more secure? And that's actually a goal, because you are looking for some answers. You don't know what form of the answer will be, but you are giving the specific question. Or you can say that we want to do this threat modeling, but we don't know why. So your goal now is to get familiar with that and do the threat modeling session in-house. And then when you have goals, you also give them some responsibility, because like they need to feel that they have some impact on your project, right? So they can lead peer reviews. They can like create some security policies. They can lead the threat modeling sessions, and then they can be your security point of contact. And in case of that, it works because like you have a person that can contact anyone from your team that has some security-related questions, or the person who can contact external providers like auditors, contest platforms, bug bounty platforms, you name it, right? But there is a person designated for that. And the person builds also the in-house knowledge. They share the knowledge. So they are the first filter of the security-oriented information that they can find on the internet. They select the one that is very applicable to your project, and then they share it in-house, right? So the other people, the other developers don't have to spend too much time on that, and they get all the essence from selected by this security champion. And in the end, this person can become your chief information security officer, right? Or they can move to some other spaces, like some other areas like threat intelligence, if you have multiple security champions, because you don't have to have only one. So like from the start, you're building your in-house security on different levels with different activities that don't cost you too much. But also, you should reuse the knowledge that's already there in the internet, right? So you should reuse ideally the free materials that are there, and there is plenty of them. But that's also the curse, because how do you find the best materials? They should address your needs, your questions. So this is actually a challenge, but this is a great challenge for the security champion that you select from your team. And also I'm gonna show you a few examples that you might find interesting. And the first one would be the CSVS I mentioned, the security checklist for dApps based on Solidity mostly. And we've built that. Well, there is a lot of categories there. So there are like 25 categories that are full of security requirements that you should follow when you're building an app. But this is huge, right? So it's hard to go through all of that. So that's why we actually built that in a form divided into chapters and categories. And some of those categories are component categories. So if you're building a vault, you'll choose only the vault category. If you're integrating with building a cross-chain application, you will only use those categories that focus on cross-chain applications, right? So it's very selective. You don't have to go through the whole. And also the output is quite interesting because it fulfills the business and the tech needs. You can see an example here where you have this, who's familiar with OWASP? Cool. So do you know OWASP ASVS? So our idea was to make a similar format. And as you can see, it's very similar to ASVS, the Excel format of that, where you can easily specify whether the particular security requirement is passed, failed, or out of scope, or give some other comment. And in the end, you have some kind of overall score of your project. And this is great for the business side of your project, right? You can think of like a security score of your project. It's not ideal, of course. It doesn't cover everything, but it's a good start because like you know your current stage in terms of security. So this is SZSVS. The next one is emergency procedures. So you have to know what to do when a hack happens or a critical bug is submitted in your bug bounty, or you simply lose your private keys or lose some access to the multi-sig, whatever, right? You cannot think about that after it happens because you don't have enough. You don't have like any more time left for that. You have to be prepared before that, and I'm sure Daniel will talk about some interesting stories regarding the incident response. So you should be really prepared for that. And there is actually a great material by Jörn, also as a TLDR checklist that you should cover. Like if you're building a project, you should cover that as soon as possible. And you should treat this as an insurance. So ideally, you will never use it, but you have to be aware of that and you have to go through that. So this is the second thing. And also the third thing, like there's many more. We've selected 3. Solidity is an aggregator of vulnerabilities found during contests and in some audit reports. So this is a great place to look for vulnerabilities that are applicable to your project. So we can find the projects similar to yours and see what vulnerabilities were submitted in those projects. And then you can like either use it as a source of ideas for threats during your threat modeling session, or you can simply tell like the security champion can get them and assign them to developers to make sure whether this particular vulnerability is also present in our code base, or how is it mitigated, or maybe we don't have that kind of functionality. So address somehow those findings. So simply learn on others' mistakes, right? So here's an example. So you have plenty of them from various audit companies, from contests, like quite plenty of them. I don't know the exact number of those findings, but it's like hundreds, and you can easily filter them. And also, tip number 4, start working with some security partner as soon as possible. So like if you think about security in projects, usually the first thing that comes to your mind is audit. So we're like, I have an idea for a project, I'll build it, and then when you're ready to release, you're like, oh, okay, I forgot, there's also security, so we need the audit, right? So I want, if I had one thing to give to you from my presentation, it would be this statement that audit is not all in security. You should start early, as I said, and you should simply find a partner that will be able to answer your security questions, because you will have them from the beginning, right? Or if you don't, it means like you're doing something wrong in terms of security. So, like, who of you is using lawyers? Like, almost everyone, right? Why? Because you don't know that much about laws. They change a lot. You have to be up to date all the time, and you simply don't have time for that. So my idea here is that you should treat security partners as your like security lawyers. So the lawyer in terms of security. You have a question, have someone to ask for that. Maybe it will become a research, some consultation, but you should have someone that you can ask security questions. It can be also your security champion at some point of time, but at the beginning it can be simply a security partner, and it can be very like easy to do. Like if you think how the consultation can work, just what do you have at the beginning? Some questions, some security-related questions. So you simply ask those questions your security partner, and then you can define the goal together with the partner. You can define the goals. So what would you like to be the result of this? How do you see the form of the answer for your question? Like what are you really looking for by asking that question? And then when you have a goal defined, you can start the consultation, like the company, the partner can do the research. And also, like many questions are very straightforward. Like you don't have the whole knowledge in security. Probably your partner don't have the whole knowledge in security as well. But for many questions, they can like answer very straightforward, like very, very quickly. And that's also a value, right? You don't have to look for that on your own. Your team doesn't have to look on that and believe that the information that they found in the internet is real. You can ask somebody that actually has experience in that. There are also things that you shouldn't do, right? So, and it's also important to know them. Like you shouldn't look for a stamp when you're doing security. So it's not like if you think that you need some name in the footer of your website, that's a bad thing. I know it happens. Like I know signaling is important, marketing is important, but even if you accept that, you really need that in signaling, you still should look for somebody, or at least make sure that this company will bring you some value in terms of security. So they will give you some insights about your project. Even if there is if it's not a vulnerability, there may be some feedback about your project, how you could do something better. There is no vulnerability, but there is some recommendation that you could do something a bit better, right? So this is actually the last one. Don't ignore laws and infos in the report, because usually projects, they are in a rush. So they assign criticals, highs, and mediums to the developers to address them, and then they forget about laws and infos. Also things like fuzzing, like tests, of course. Well, I already thought that it's a must, and nobody tries to release any project without even unit tests, but it still happens. So don't do that. Remember about the in-house security in terms of internal audits, peer reviews. So like even your security champion can become some kind of the first layer auditor of your project. And in the end, as a last thing, I'd like to invite you to check out the security guide that we have created, which actually summarizes a bit this presentation. And also, like, if you want, you can reach me, or I'll share it with you as well. It covers like multiple things, including bug bounties that we were talking about, not that deep, but still like it gives you some security services that you can use. It gives you some goals, how you can increase your internal security in your company. So feel invited to check this out. And if you have any questions or like future thoughts you'd like to discuss, I'm gonna be here. And that's it from me. Thank you.